I think it's okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivakacharya Ashto Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivakacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki. Ganga Mai Ki. Yamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Tulsi Devi Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Gaura Premanande Hirbo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're gonna speak on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 3. Yeva Maeshe Krita Sauridarta. Oh, I'm sorry. Ye Va Maeshe Krita Sauridarta Janeshu Dihambar Vartikeshu Griheshu Jayatmaja Ratimatsu Na Priti Yukta Yavad Anarthas Chaloke Yeva Maishe Krita Sauridarta Janeshu Deham Vartikeshu Griheshu Jayatmajarati Matsu Napriti Yukta Yavad Archascha Loke Yeva Mayeshe Krita Sauridarta Janeshu Deham Vartikeshu Griheshu Jayatmatmajarati Matsu Napriti Yukta Yavad Archascha Loke Yeva Maishe Krita Sauridarta Janeshu Deham Vartikeshu Greshu Jayatmajarati Matsu Napriti Yukta Yavad Archascha Loke. Please chant. Yeva Maishe Krita Sauridarta Janeshu Deham Vartikeshu Griheshu Jayatmajarati Matsu Napriti Yukta Yavad Archascha Loke. Yeva Maishe Krita Sauridarta Janeshu Deham Vartikeshu Griheshu Jayatmajarati Matsu Napriti Yukta Yavad Archascha Loke. Yeva Maishe Krita Sauridarta Janeshu Deham Vartikeshu Griheshu Jayatmajarati Matsu Napriti Yukta Yavad Archascha Loke. Anyone else would like to try? Yeva Maishe Krita Sauridarta Janeshu Deham Vartikeshu Griheshu Jayatmajarati Matsu Napriti Yukta Yavad Archascha Loke. Yea, those who va or mai unto me, Ishai, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krita Sauridartaha, very eager to develop love in a relationship of Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya. Janeshu, to people, Deham Vartikeshu, who are interested only in maintaining the body, not in spiritual salvation. Griheshu, to the home, Jaya, wife, Atmaja, children, Rati, wealth or friends, Matsu, consisting of, Na, not, Priti Yuktaha, very attached, Yavad Artaha, who live by collecting only, as much as required. Cha, and, Loke, in the material world. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Those who are interested in reviving Krishna consciousness and increasing their love of Godhead do not like to do anything that is not related to Krishna. They are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders, nor are they attached to wives, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. Whether he is an impersonalist or a devotee, one who is actually interested in advancing spiritually should not mingle with those who are simply interested in maintaining the body by means of the so-called advancement of civilization. Those who are interested in spiritual life should not be attached to homely comforts in the company of wife, children, friends, and so forth. Even if one is a Grihastha and has to earn his livelihood, he should be satisfied by collecting only enough money to maintain body and soul together. One should not have more than that or less than that. As indicated herein, a householder should endeavor to earn money by the execution of Bhakti Yoga. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Atma Vedanam, Smaranam, Parasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Vedanam. A householder should lead such a life that he gets full opportunity to hear and chant. He should worship the deity at home, observe festivals, invite friends in, and give them prasad. A householder should earn money for this purpose, not for sense gratification. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshur Umiltam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada, he emphasized two things: simple living, high thinking, and make the best use of a bad bargain. And what does that mean? Srila Prabhupada wanted his devotees to live very simple lives. The devotees are not concerned with the latest fashion, the latest technology, or the newest car that is out on the market. Srila Prabhupada discouraged us from going to cinemas, restaurants, sports bars, and associating with worldly-minded people. Why? Because he knew it was a waste of time. He wanted us to utilize this life so we can go back home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada knew the importance of his Krishna consciousness movement and the little time he had left to train his disciples. There is a saying that summarizes the society of today. People are spending money that they don't have to buy things that they don't need to impress people that they don't like. When I go out on books, when people find out that I'm a monk, they try to see how a monk lives in this postmodern world. So I tell them, I don't have 5 sets of clothes, we sleep on the floor, and we rise early, just before 4:30 every morning. They are amazed at the austerities that we go through. They are even more shocked to know about the 4 regulative principles and the vows that we take. My spiritual master, His Holiness Badrinarayan Swami Maharaj, told me when they see a monk, they think, gee, I can never do that. But I'm glad somebody's doing it. Being part of this International Society for Krishna Consciousness movement is very special. It has made me realize and appreciate what Srila Prabhupada has sacrificed in order to teach us about purification of the heart from our unclean habits. Socrates, he says, contentment is natural wealth, and luxury is artificial poverty. This body is a bad bargain. Why? Because no one wants to become old, but we are forced to become old. And no one wants to die, but we must die. Prahlad Maharaj says in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the human body is most rarely achieved, and although temporary, like other bodies, it is meaningful, because in human life, one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of devotional service can give one complete perfection. We should use this human form of life properly and know the value of this great gift. Before getting in your car and begin driving, what is the first most important thing that you need?
I wouldn't say the key, but know the destination.
The destination. A person must know the purpose of life, and that purpose is to understand and revive our lost eternal relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nichadas. It is the living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna, because he is the marginal energy of Krishna. Without knowing where to go, not only is time wasted, but it actually means we are lost. A person may follow all the rules of the road, but without a proper goal, one spoils his life aimlessly, wandering around. People have forgotten the aim of human life, and it is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12th canto. In the Kali age, people tend to be greedy, ill-behaved, and merciless, and they fight one another without good reason. Unfortunate and obsessed with material desires, the people of Kali Yuga are almost all Shudras and barbarians. When Srila Prabhupada was giving a class on Srimad Bhagavatam in Los Angeles about the Mohini Murti incarnation of the Lord, Srila Prabhupada mentions that even Lord Shiva was bewildered by the beautiful form. Srila Prabhupada says, Lord Shiva, who was supposed to be Dhira, sober-minded, even he was attracted by the Mohini Murti form. He says in the purport, this demonstrates that by the power of the Lord's external energy, everyone is captivated by the form of a woman in this material world. Srila Prabhupada then tells his disciples, in your country, you all have charming wives. To have a charming wife is not very good. Srila Prabhupada quotes Chanakya Pandit. He says there are 4 kinds of enemies in a family. In Vedic times, family meant father, mother, wife, and children. But in the West, family just means wife and children. So Chanakya Pandit says, in a family, there are enemies. A father who is a great debtor, he is an enemy, because the son inherits the money of the father. Similarly, the law is that if the father dies a debtor, the son becomes responsible for paying the debt. That is the law, Manusamhita. If the mother marries a second time, she's an enemy. A very beautiful wife, she's an enemy. And if the son is a fool rascal, he's an enemy. These are the 4 kinds of enemies. And then Chanakya Pandit also describes who is happy. He says the man who does not go out of home and who is not a debtor, he is happy. Very simple thing. Who does not go out of home and he's not a debtor, he's happy. This reminds me of a story when I used to work. There was a lady, she was a millionaire. I was working in Coronado. And I guess she had a lot of enemies in her family. In her last will, she gave all of her inheritance to her cat. Yeah, so people, they don't trust their family members, and it's very unfortunate. When Srila Prabhupada was married, somehow or other, he did not like his wife, although she was faithful. Srila Prabhupada said he was preparing for the next marriage, but his saintly father requested him not to marry again. Srila Prabhupada's father said, you don't like your wife? That is a great fortune for you. Please do not marry again. Then Srila Prabhupada realized his father's blessings. If he was too attached to his wife, he would not come to this position. Srila Prabhupada says, too much attachment to wife is a great impediment for spiritual advancement. If one's wife becomes very beautiful, he forgets his real duty, Krishna consciousness, and simply becomes a pet servant of the wife. In the Grihastha ashram, householder life, the wife is not accepted for sex satisfaction. Marriage system means restricting sex life. Marriage is meant for begetting Krishna consciousness children, and that's all. The wife is called Dharma Patni. Dharma Patni means a religious wife, or husband and wife should execute religious life, spiritual cultivation. Both should make progress in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada says the husband should be a first-class devotee, and the woman should be devoted to husband, faithful. Then their life can be happy and perfect. There are also great examples of Grihasthas, such as Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Prahlad Maharaj, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Bali Maharaj, Yamaraj, and so on. But ultimately, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore said that I am neither a Brahmana or a Kshatriya nor a Vaishya or Shudra. Neither I am a Brahmachari nor Grihastha nor Vanapras or Sannyasi. He kept himself Naham Vipro Nacha Narapati. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalayor Dasha Das Anudas. I am the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, text 18, purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, a devotee is always free from all bad association. Sometimes one is praised and sometimes one is defamed. That is the nature of human society. But a devotee is always transcendental to artificial fame and infamy, distress or happiness. He is very patient. He does not speak of anything but the topics of Krishna. Therefore he is called silent. Silent does not mean that one should not speak. Silent means that one should not speak nonsense. When I was working again, my coworkers, they would gather together and talk about other topics like gossiping, casinos and things like that. So they had noticed that I was quiet and I was just minding my own business. And one of them asked, why aren't you saying anything? Is everything okay? So I told him this. Silent does not mean that one should not speak. Silent means that one should not speak nonsense. I had already given up going to the cinemas, restaurants, or places that served meat and alcohol. So there was nothing for me to say to them. We had nothing in common. During an interview with Sandy Nixon, Srila Prabhupada says, to understand God means one must be a first-class civilized man. Just like university is meant for first-class students, similarly, God consciousness is meant for first-class human beings. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 3, Krishna says, out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. To understand Krishna is not such an easy thing, but by the mercy of Krishna and his devotees, he reveals himself to us. When I distribute books, I tell the people, I have a book for you. I would like to share this very special book with you. Would you like to give it a chance? And this happened yesterday. There was these two couples, they were walking by, and the girl, she said, no, I'm not interested. And then the guy came to my table and he said, what's so special about this book? So I told him, this book, it helps you to understand 3 essential questions that every human being needs to ask. Who am I? What is the purpose of existence? And what happens at the time of death? It also teaches the art of inner happiness and inner peace, and they appreciate it. Yeah, they took a book. Yesterday also, it was raining very hard in Balboa Park. Dimitri and I, we were soaking wet. The books got a little wet, but we managed to save it. As I was packing my books, there was just 2 twins. They were twins. And I told them, hey, I'm a twin. And so I asked them if they wanted a book, but they refused. And then a few moments later, they noticed that I was almost leaving. So one of them approached me and said, is it too late to get a book? So I said no. And so I took out the 4 different books that I had. Bhagavad Gita, The Science of Self-Realization, Beyond Birth and Death, and Coming Back. And then so I was presenting the books, and they actually liked it. And I asked them, which book were you interested in reading? And then they said all of it. So they gave a nice donation, and then I gave them the book. So there's a story. There's a child crying on the road, and 4 people approach the child. The first person thinks he must be hungry, so he feeds the child. The child stops crying, but after a short while, the baby starts crying again. The second person thinks, this child has been out on the sun. Let me move him in the shade to be more comfortable. The child again begins to cry after a short time. The third person thinks, this child needs nurturing and affection. After being held for some time, the child starts crying again. But the fourth person knew exactly what was wrong, and he knew the solution. The child is lost, and the only way to fully satisfy him is to reconnect him back to his parents. When he's connected to the parents, everything else follows. Comfort, nurture, affection. So this represents the conditioned souls. They are trying to live a comfortable life, eating luxuriously and chasing relationships. But ultimately, everything is taken away at the end of life. Krishna says in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Mritu sarva harash chaham. I am all devouring death. I take everything away. And this example is given. A screw that is attached to a machine, it has purpose. But if that same screw has fallen off and is on the street, nobody cares for it. What is its value? If it is again connected to the machine, then it has function. Similarly, all souls are part and parcel of Krishna. We are trying to reconnect them back to Krishna. If we are disconnected from Krishna, what is our value? In the 3rd canto, it explains a certain animal, the musk deer. And this is where the musk cologne comes from, the fragrance. This musk deer secretes an intoxicating scent from its navel. It becomes captivated by the smell, and it goes into the forest chasing here and there, trying to find the source of the smell. It does not realize it is coming from its own body. It eventually gets exhausted and dies. Then a hunter or merchant extracts all that musk and makes a profit. So this is what's happening. I tell people when I go out on books, people are chasing after happiness. They're no longer looking. And I ask them, when people have free time, what do? They spend money. They look for places to go. They try to find the newest entertainment. And when I go out on book distribution, I see a lot of people going back and forth. Like they don't have a place to go. And then I tell them, hey, if you come back around, get a book. Because, what are they doing with their life? The world is chasing after happiness, looking in the forest of this material world, not knowing that real happiness comes from within the soul. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 11, text 27, purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Lord is death for the demons, but for devotees he is Amrita, eternal life. Devotees who render continuous service to the Lord have already attained immortality. For whatever they are doing in this life, they will continue to do in the next. They will simply change their material bodies for spiritual bodies, unlike the demons. They no longer have to change material bodies. The Lord, therefore, is simultaneously death and immortality. He is death for demons and immortality for devotees. There was this elderly man yesterday. I asked him, hey, I'd like to talk to you. So he kept checking his watch. And then he said, what's your question? So I said, what do you think happens at the time of death? And then he said, I haven't thought about it.
What?
And I told him, death can happen at any time. We should try to understand what is death, what happens to the soul when it leaves this body. And he said, no, I only believe in one life. After this, that's it. And he walked away. So I said, you might be wrong. And then he looked back and he said, I can't be wrong. So people are, I can be wrong. Yeah, so he admitted he's not sure. I was speaking to this person a few days ago, and he was claiming, he believed in science. So he didn't believe the existence of the soul. So I told him, how do you know there's no soul? And he said, well, we can't prove it. So we had a nice discussion, actually, and eventually I convinced him that consciousness and life are symptoms of the soul. Just like fire is characterized by heat and light. And I also told him that there's a lot of things in this world that we can't see. And he actually appreciated it. And he was very scientific minded, so I gave him a easy journey to other planets. I told him there are material planets as well as spiritual planets. But the spiritual planets, the scientists, they have no idea. I told him the spiritual planets are called Vaikuntha, a place where there's no worry. Life there is eternal, and it's Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, those that reach that supreme abode, it is neither illuminated by fire, electricity, moon or sun. So I told him it's self-effulgent, and he was actually he was attracted by the spiritual planets. When I was distributing books the other day, I noticed a little child. He was crying. So I said, "Hey, where's your parents?" And then he said, "I don't know where my parents are." And then so I told him, "You can stay here, you know." And then I went out and I was looking, and there was these two couples. They were looking left and right. So I asked them, "Excuse me, are you looking for somebody?" And they said, "Yeah, I'm looking for my son." So I grabbed him, and then I brought him over to a table, and sure enough, that was the son. So yeah, so like that fourth person, we are really trying to reconnect all the souls back to Krishna. And everyone, they're trying to forget their worries. When they go to I heard this, when people go to Disneyland, they have fun for a few hours. And when they come back to the parking lot, their problems are still there. Yeah. So people overindulge in drugs, things like that, and in order just to forget the real problems of life, which is birth, death, old age, and disease. When Maharaj and I, when we were going to Los Angeles for Janmashtami, we were in the car for 2 hours. So Maharaj told me, being in the car for 2 hours is hellish. Imagine being in the womb for 9 months. So people do not understand the danger of taking birth again. And when Maharaj and I was driving him back to his apartment, and we saw this homeless person. He had a flat basketball, shoestring, one pair of shoes. It didn't make sense to us. And so Maharaj says, this is how Krishna sees us with our silly attachments. We're attached to our bank accounts, we're attached to this and that, and Krishna is just waiting for us, please just let that go. And we're still hesitant to let our pity desires go. It reminds me of the pastime of Lord Indra, when he was cursed to take birth in a hog's body. So he was nicely situated. He had his wife, his piglets, his kids. And so Lord Brahma, was Lord Brahma? Lord Brahma told him, dear Indra, your curse has now been, it's over. Please come back to your heavenly abode. And Lord Indra, he refused. He said, why should I go back? I have nice food stuff, I have my family, I have my kids, I have my friends. So similarly, all of us, we think there's a lot of importance in this material world, but there actually isn't. And this material world is compared to the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. The relationships, the activities that we have here is also there, but there it's eternal. Srila Prabhupada also says that the business of a Shudra, this is the story of a Jamil. A Jamil, he was practicing Brahminical life. And one day he went out into the forest and he saw two Shudras embracing and kissing out in public. They had no shame. So Srila Prabhupada, he says that Shudra's business is exactly that. They don't care for who is looking, what they're doing. And the opposite of that is a Brahmin. I also remember there's two words, Kripana and a Brahmin. A Kripana is someone that earns wealth, but they don't use it properly. They spend it on their own selfish sense gratification. Okay. I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or corrections? Okay.
Oh, I have two questions.
Yes.
Well, I'll ask this one first, and then we'll see whether has questions. Very nice class, but it's my job to, if I was a householder devotee couple, or married couple in the congregation, and I heard this, I might be thinking, well, what? I'm just supposed to be miserable? And my wife's supposed to be miserable? Or, okay, we're not miserable, but we tolerate each other? That's all it really is? Because really, any affection or warmth, that's just Maya. So, you know, okay, fine. We go about our duty together, and I'm happy as a devotee. But, I mean, is that what devotee couples, that's what it is? Now I'm always thinking, well, hey, she's Maya. I mean, it's hard to ask a brahmachari this, but I mean, I would feel a little, especially if I was a woman householder, devotee, I would be thinking, well, gee, what is this all about? You know, I'm just a second-class citizen who's tolerated. What's that?
So
Take it away, Prabhu.
So there's a saying, love at first sight, and the following is divorce at first fight. If people are attracted just on artificial physical attraction, it doesn't last. Beauty wears off, you know. I think Maharaj says there's a 7-year itch. After 7 years, the man or the woman, they gain weight, and then they're no longer attracted to each other. But in a householder life, a marriage life, if the foundation is set on a strong foundation, like Krishna consciousness, then they should be able to work together. They advance together. And also heard in a class that if the wife is taking care of the children and then the man comes to the temple and hears, he can share that with his wife. So there's no devotees. We have a lot of nice householder devotees, members also. And just like Srila Prabhupada says, the husband must be first class. And then the wife, she's willing to follow. She's not going to look for anybody else. If a person has good qualities, it's very attractive. Maharaj gave me this example. Someone can be very beautiful, someone can maybe very well dressed and highly educated. But if he doesn't have good qualities, he's compared to a very beautiful flower, but with no fragrance. So what is the content of the character? I met a young man, he was, you know, well built, and I asked him, what do you do? And then he said, I'm a fitness trainer. And I said, okay. So, and then when he was talking to me, all he was speaking was unimportant things. And so I told him, everybody's taking care of their physical health, but they're neglecting their spiritual health. And what makes the body beautiful is the soul. The soul is what's animating the body. As soon as the soul leaves the body, it becomes a dead corpse. But the importance of the soul is not stressed enough in the educational system. Does that help, Maharaj?
Yeah,
Okay.
but there's some... Yes, but, you know, anyone who helps me, Prabhupada says, if someone renders service and you don't appreciate, what kind of person are you?
Mm-hmm.
So the man is helping the wife advance in spiritual life. The wife is helping the man, vice versa. Then there's some appreciation. There is some, and, you know, we all have friendship. So a marriage that's based on spiritual service and spiritual friendship, then there is real warmth and affection. And like you say, it doesn't, you know, when everybody gets old and wrinkled, it all falls apart, or, you know, I got to get Botox and, you know, plastic surgery. If it's got that, like you said, spiritual foundation. So there is real warmth and real affection in a devotionally based marriage. It's the only place that there really is solid and lasting affection and respect. So there's warmth in a devotee marriage. It's not that it's just, well, whatever.
I was also reading, Srila Prabhupada said that a householder, he's very responsible. So if you want to be a householder, you should be responsible.
I just wanted to verify real quick. Hare Krishna. Did you say one shoe and a flat basketball?
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
Yeah, we saw it. We saw it.
Thank you, Prabhu.
And
And
the
he-
guy had it all protected, all tied down. Does anyone else have a question? Because I've got one. Go ahead, Daniel. You go first.
Thank you, Govardhan Prabhu.
Jai.
So I'm relating to the story you said about the one screw falling off the machine, and it's basically it would still function. But what if multiple screws fall off the machine, and then what's the purpose of the machine if all those screws fall off?
So Srila Prabhupada says that, I'll give this example. The part can never become the whole. And each individual soul, if they're disconnected from Krishna, they're trying to be God. They're trying to take the position of Krishna. And ultimately, everything fails. And these multiple screws, that's what's happening if you look around. All of these souls, they're disconnected from Krishna now. And so a kindly Vaishnav, he should try to remember, my business is to try to bring as many souls as I can back to the spiritual world. It's like that. Does that answer?
In a sense it did, but also there was it's just more of, what if all the screws, just like everybody just falls off? Is there a point in time where that happens? And then like, is there some way that is proper?
I think you misunderstood the analogy. The analogy Prabhupada gives is that one screw holding the machine together is very important. But when that screw falls out, you know, it doesn't mean anything. Its importance isn't connecting to the machine. So that's the analogy. I don't know where you're going with many.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Is that all right? Can I ask my other question?
Yes, Maharaj.
Well, so you're talking, this thing is so loud. You're talking with your friends, not your friends, you're at work in your old days, and they're all just talking rubbish. And so they said, how come you're not saying anything? You say, well, you know, real talk begins when you talk, you know. Silence means not talking nonsense. How do they respond to that? Because basically you said, you know, you're just talking rubbish.
Well, I told them...
I mean, it was nice that you said it. I'm just wondering how they responded.
Well, they kind of knew I was becoming indifferent to everyone else. And it reminds me of a story also. We had a potluck for a meeting. And I brought some sweets here, sandesh and burfi. And everyone else they were bringing Doritos and this and that and, you know, burritos, you know, meat products. And then so I sat at the table and I tried, you know, making it look nice. And I asked everyone, please take a sweet, please take a sweet. And they refused to. And then they offered me you know, Coke, Pepsi, and I said, oh, I can't take it. So it's the opposite. And they did appreciate. I told them, I'm sorry, you know, I don't watch sports. I can't. We don't have anything in common anymore. So I told him, but if you want to talk about God, if you want to talk about purpose in life, if you want to talk about higher topics, then we can discuss that. And I told him, I don't gamble. Yeah.
There's some of these we don't do.
But I also told them, you know, everyone has free will. You're more than likely to do whatever. You can do whatever you want. But for me, I would rather spend my time reading. I would rather spend my time reading these spiritual books. And, yeah, they appreciated it. I didn't try to be too harsh or yeah.
You know, Prabhupada, as describing the translation, one of the meanings of the word Hari, Krishna's Hari, one who takes away, Prabhupada said, and it's a very common phenomena, that people lose interest in you because, well, you're no fun anymore. You know, you're not, hey, what about those Padres, or, you know, we're just not into it, you know. And so people, and it's actually Krishna's mercy because they just leave you alone. They figure, well, you know, he's no fun anymore. They don't. Your phone stops ringing. Nobody's knocking on the door. One of the qualities of a devotee is Riktananda. Prabhupada describes that they actually take pleasure in being alone. Now we like associating with devotees, but you know, we're not on that passionate merry-go-round anymore. And they lose interest and they leave you alone. It's a very common phenomena.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Govardhana Prabhu, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Prabhu, my question is, in what measure congregational chanting when it is practiced in my household life, is powerful enough in order to make me see that my wife is not a machine for sense gratification, but a part and parcel of Lord Krishna.
Thank you. So, congregational chanting is the Yuga Dharma in this age, and Prabhupada said just chant. Just chant.
But he was saying something about his wife.
Um,
I didn't quite follow the connection, but he was asking how much is his wife or the wife seeing the husband just as a means for sense gratification.
So I heard this in a lecture. I forget the names, but there were two people that were getting married, and their spiritual master said, before seeing your wife as your wife, you should see her as a maidservant of Krishna. And she turned to the wife and she said, before seeing your husband as a husband, you should see him as a servant of Krishna. So that way you both see each other as devotees. You don't disrespect each other, you serve together, things like that. So Vijay Krishna Prabhu, if you have a wife, you should see her as a maidservant of Krishna all the time.
Yes, Prabhu, I do not have a wife, but if I decide to go for getting married, I'll do as you are instructing me. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
You're welcome. Thank you, Vijay. Is there any other questions?
60 years old. Tell him no, no.
Maharaj,
I've already left on that one.
Maharaj says if
Yes,
you're over,
Maharaj.
if
If your recommendation is for me to give up getting married, I will follow your instruction, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Krishna's mercy.
yes.
No fool like an old fool. You care?
So yeah, thank you for your time and attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.